Good morning. We're going to be starting. Can people hear me? Yeah? All right. So just a reminder, we are going to be starting in a minute, but I want to remind folks that first we have our executive committee meeting at 9, from 9 to 10, and then our SANDAG board meeting starts at 10 a.m. I know there might have been some confusion, but we are trying to make sure that we are good to the folks who are coming from different areas that may be stuck in traffic. And so we made the changes per the request of some of my colleagues to have the executive committee meeting at 9 a.m. So I think some folks may have had some confusion on their calendars, but everybody's welcome to listen in as we're moving forward with our executive committee. So thank you, and we'll start in about a minute or so. Don't start with me. Good morning. Happy Friday, everyone. I am going to go ahead and move forward with the April 14th Executive Committee meeting. Call it to order. First, I'm going to ask Nancy to explain how to access interpretation. Nancy?
Good morning. My name is Nancy Hand. I'll be the Spanish interpreter for today's meeting, and I will explain first in Spanish and then in English how to use the interpreting function. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, en un celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos o 3 puntos, luego Interpretation y luego el idioma. To use the Zoom interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are, click on the interpretation icon, which looks like a globe, and select either English or Spanish. If you are joining using the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone or tablet or other device, press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to start our meeting first with, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tessa. Can you take the roll for Executive Committee?
Good morning. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Elo Rivera.
Present.
County of San Diego, Chair Vargas.
Vargas here.
East County is absent. North County Coastal, Vice Chair Hebner.
Present.
North County Inland, Mayor Jones.
Here.
South County, Councilmember Cardenas.
Present.
Transportation Committee Chair, Councilmember Shu.
Here.
Public Safety Committee Chair, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Present.
Audit Committee Chair, Deputy Mayor Zito. That concludes the roll call.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region and the most in any county in the United States, from our 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, the Aguiño, the Luiseño, the Cupeño, and the Coahuila. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. And as members of the Sangre community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experience in undoing the injustices of the past. With that, can you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? And then your heart, please begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's go ahead and begin today's non-agenda public comments. Tessa, and we have, I think, 2 minutes, right?
Thank you. I have currently 4 public commenters on this item. The first is Dr. Timothy Bylash in person. Please come up to the podium.
Good morning, Executive Committee. My name is Dr. Timothy Bylash. I am a physician, board certified OBGYN, and a well-trained scientist and a SANDAG nudge. I thank you for listening to my comments once again. I probably attended more SANDAG meetings than almost anybody in the last 2 years. I particularly appreciated the nonpartisan nature of the executive of the SANDAG organization. Most people are unaware of SANDAG when I talk to them, and unaware of the nonpartisan nature serving the entire area and the residents of the community. And so I salute the blue line, which was an engineering impossibility to my eye, and the continued efforts for climate, housing, and other important issues in the county. Friends I talked to recently consider me a cross between Clark Kent, the awkward person that doesn't know what to say, and the genie in the Aladdin movie that Robin Williams plays. Because it always seems that I want to do things that are impossible. And if you look at what I've done and how I tried to contribute to this committee, we'll like to continue that. SANDAG is a nonpartisan organization, and in that vein, I'd like to notify the board that as of April 22nd, I will be seeking the one of the 2 elections as the representative to the House of Congress in the United States government for District 50 in California. I am registered for that and will be ramping up the campaign as of the 22nd. I will continue to speak in a nonpartisan manner. It is a nonpartisan election. And I want to salute the executives, each of the people and the new members now, to continue the actions of the board. And later today, I hope to speak.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be virtual, Mike Bullock, who will be followed by Blair Beekman. Mike, go ahead.
Unmute. Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Honorable Board and members of the Executive Committee. The California Air Resources Board periodically produces a scoping plan, and the scoping plan is how California can achieve its climate mandates. The most important climate mandate is in 2030. It's 40% below the 1990 level. And I think everybody's familiar with the second one, and that's net zero by 2045. But what they've come out with is extremely pertinent to your mission. Your number one mission is to make sure that cars achieve the climate stabilizing requirements given to us by the climate scientist. And the state mandates, they are working to get that 2030 number more in line with what the climate scientists are saying, and appreciate that effort. But so I'm going to read from the scoping plan that they just came out with. It says zero emission vehicles are not enough to solve the climate crisis. That's the heading. It says contrary to popular belief, and then it makes a statement again. And so what do they have to do? We must reduce VMT from 24.6 miles per day in 2019 to 18.4 miles by 2030. Now that's a 25% reduction. It says that in parentheses, it says a 25% reduction. So what they're saying is from 2019 to 2030, we need a 25% reduction. What have they told you? They have told you that relative to 2005, you need a 19% reduction by 2035, 5 years later. So you must do much, much more.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Blair Beekman, who will be followed by our final speaker, Catherine Rhodes. Blair, please go ahead.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Happy meeting today. I'm really working on new subject matter for myself in my life's work, basically. I'm trying to understand the future of broadband installation that you're doing in rural areas and in tribal areas in San Diego County. That was a really interesting subject to me. It really hit a spot in moving down here recently. And so, you know, I'm interested in the concepts of racial equity a lot, and how we talk about racial equity these days compared to the ideas of equality. And obviously, racial equity has become a much more important subject to ourselves, and we have to devote a bit more time to it. But I'm trying to find the ways that we can also talk about equality. And it's the work with tech accountability that I do now that I think is really important. You know, open public policies, it's accountable process. To bring that to the tribal lands, I think is an interesting subject and brings up the overall concepts of how do we actually talk about democracy in tribal lands. And I think those are to talk about civil rights and the civil protections within openness and accountability practices are decent ways to talk about this country's democracy. And that's about all I can say for now about the subject. I'm trying to learn how to develop this sort of conversation that I think is really invigorating for the whole process and how we work and function as local communities. Good luck in these efforts. And to note, my work is being harassed a bit. I'm pretty bullied in my life, and it's sad when bullies are in people's lives. Good. I hope for patience with myself at this time and ask for some compassion and camaraderie. This is the way we end bullies. Thanks.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Catherine Rhodes. Catherine, please go ahead.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes. Sad news. Yesterday at the City Council's Land Use and Housing Committee, they criminalized the poor and homeless everywhere. All homeless advocates do agree on bans near schools. Led by cruel, strong Mayor Todd Gloria and Council Member Steve Whitburn, who both are running for office in 2024. They're specifically trying to send poor people to county jails. Mayor Jones and and Councilmember Shu, please investigate if the city of San Diego's actions to clean up and empty their downtown will instead move homeless north and east to your cities. And what they don't understand is that what Council Member Whitburn did was great. He's going to move people from downtown and Hillcrest, and he's going to move them to the coastal zone because the coastal zone in districts 1, 2, and 8 don't get approved until it goes through the coastal commission. So all the homeless are going to move to the coastal zone and east and north. And they're specifically going to go into Otay Mesa, Nestor, Barrio Logan, Point Loma, PB, Ocean Beach, Mission Beach, La Jolla, Torrey Pines, and Carmel Valley. And so this is their plan right now. And then the second thing is for Supervisor Vargas, if you do the Senate bill, I believe, I forgot what Senate bill it is by Tony Atkins, so that the supervisors get oversight of the sheriffs, then you can say that all the people working in the sheriff department have to be drug tested and screened for drugs, so we don't have these overdoses in the jails. You can see there's a lot of Latinos in these prisons, and this is also juvenile detention. You'll be able to go in there and actually look at the conditions yourself. And the sheriff, she promised everything to everybody, and then she changed her mind when she got into office, and now she has free reign, and everything is as bad. And
Your time has expired, and that concludes the public comments.
Thank you so much. Thank you again. We're going to move over to consent agenda. You're going to see the regional plan workshop on the draft for the 28th. And I wanted to explain that I'm hoping that for this item, what we're going to be able to do is that this will be the first of many discussions or conversations that we're having regarding the 2025 plan. I want to make sure, and we'll talk about it also during our regular board meeting, but I wanted to make sure that we see this item first as being the first phase of the workshop, where we can really go over the timeline. I've heard from several of you about components of the plan that you want to make sure that are part of it, and that things that you're especially interested in. So I want us to be able to talk about these issues, make sure that they're part of that. And I want to make sure that staff is really clear with all of us about what are, from our retreat, what is in our circle of control, and which ones we have influence over and which ones we don't. And so that we all have that discussion and are very, focused on that. And so I want everybody to be prepared for that, so that the board and the community can participate in the development of the plan. I think it's extremely important that they're all participating, they're part of the process. And then I want to add a second workshop to the May 12th board agenda. And our goal at the end of that would be to have a resolution with a guidance with the framework for the plan. And so I know that staff have a couple of other changes they would like to present. So I'm going to turn it over to Colleen.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So in order to accommodate that, to be able to have the two meetings in a row on the regional plan, we're going to make a couple of other adjustments to the agenda that's in front of you. So we're going to move the bond refunding item out 2 weeks. So that'll move to the May 26th meeting. We'd also like to move the FY 2021 Transnet Extension Ordinance Funding Eligibility requests to the May 26th meeting. Also, that needs to go to the Transportation Committee first. And so in order to accommodate that, we'd like to make that change. And then we also would like to add a closed session item on April 28th. This is to discuss pending personnel litigation in the matter of Neal versus Sandag. So want to make sure that that's included, and with your approval, we'll move forward to making those changes.
Let me go ahead and go to public comment, and then we'll have members of the executive committee comment. So any public comment, Ms. Tissa?
There are no public comments on this item.
Thank you. Any members have comments? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make sure, because when we were presented the last regional plan, we didn't have options. So I just want to make sure that when it comes to us and, during the creation of it, that we will have options, and it won't just be you vote for this or we ran out of time, because that's what happened last time. I just want to make sure we don't run up into our deadline and say, well, this is the plan as it is, and we don't really have options.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And so I think that's why I know this is why I asked the team to provide us with a timeline, because I feel like there's a sense of urgency, and I want people to understand sort of when are the deadlines that we have to meet, and then how do we make sure that community is incorporated. And I think I would encourage you that there are specific options that you would like to see, make sure that those are brought up beforehand, so that they're actually part of the discussion, so that it's not well, why isn't this here? Why isn't that there? But versus, hey, make sure that these are recommended, and then the board can have a bigger discussion about whether or not they should be included, or if it's part of our circle of control or not, and what we're able to accomplish. So great question. So thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
I'm really curious if staff has started on planning this, if you could give us a preview of what this will look like. Is it going to be us in smaller groups, or is it going to be sort of like like we had last time out in the other room where we were just reviewing staff members in different departments, et cetera?
So thank you, Second Vice Chair Huebner. What we have in mind for this first workshop is really to dig into the timeline with a group discussion. And then what are some of the expectations? What are the things that board members would really like to see? Then on April 28th, we do envision breaking out into groups and discussing some of those key elements. We'll certainly look for input from all of you on how you see that best working, but that's what we had envisioned for you.
So it'll be similar to when we were in our big tables at the retreat.
Yes.
And you will put us in distinct groups with mostly things not in common than in common, right? Which is good. So we can discuss and learn from each other. Okay. And then we'll have a staff member on each table
Yes.
and a scribe.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That sounds really wonderful. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up question. So are we envisioning more than one workshop? It sounds to me like, yes.
So what I requested is that because I've been getting questions from board members, I thought it was important that we phase it into two sort of, they're calling it workshops because that's what you have to call it so that people can have part of the discussion, right? And so the first one that we're having is the discussion to approve the timeline, what we want to see, concepts, et cetera, et cetera. We'll have a discussion as a board. We're not going to leave the boardroom, provide all that. And then the second one is what we actually have. We roll up our sleeves, dig in, make sure that what we want to be in there will be part of that plan. And that is the day that we're going to be able to say, okay, this is what the actual resolution looks like. So my hope is that we're able to keep on track and we're able to meet our goals. If something comes up, then I think we have a bigger discussion around that. But yeah.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other member comments? Yes, sir.
I guess since we're talking about the workshops and what we're going to hopefully do there, and I hope SANDAG does provide the time constraints of doing RTP, as well as a pretty clear picture of the requirements that the CARB has given us and the federal and state transportation agencies. And lastly, we just heard a speaker talk about the new guidelines from CARB, the scoping plan of 25% VMT reduction by 2030. And I hope that's made well known to us that that's coming or already here. Actually, that scoping plan was passed just last year. And the importance of that in terms of not just meeting that guideline from CARB, but in terms of the co-benefits of meeting that, as well as, it's game over for the planet if we don't meet that. So I think that's pretty important. That's the confines that we get to weigh in what options we have going forward.
And again, I'd like to encourage members, and I'll share this during our board meeting as well. Please, concerns, questions, share them with staff so that it can be incorporated into the discussion so that we can have a really thorough discussion as we're moving forward. With that, I see no other further discussion. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Chairwoman, prior to the vote, I'd like to make a statement that we had a request from a member of the public to correct the minutes for his comments. Steve Gelb would like us to correct his statement to be in support of CEO performance evaluation.
You're good?
Yes, I'm good.
All right. With that, can we vote, please?
If you would prefer to just state your vote for the record, we can correct the slide later.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we're going to move on to our staff reports for today and update on our legislative activities. Hannah and Jose. if you could join us, please.
Good morning. My name is Hannah Stern, and I will provide you with a brief update of our work with the federal government over the last month. Last week, Caltrans and SANDAG hosted Administrator Shaylin Bott from the Federal Highways Administration at the Otay Mesa East point of entry site for a tour and discussions about the project. The administrator traveled to San Diego along with the White House infrastructure czar, Mitch Landrieu, as part of their roadshow to promote federal funding opportunities provided by the bipartisan infrastructure law. We also hosted FHWA's Deputy Administrator Rogers yesterday here at SANDAG to continue the discussion. We are grateful to FHWA and their staff for the engagement and interest they've shown on our work in the YOMI project. Also yesterday, SANDAG leadership, including Second Vice Chair Huebner, met with the Administrator of the Federal Railroad Administration, Emmett Bowes. Administrator Bowes joined Congressman Mike Levin in his district to tour the San Diego, Los Angeles, San Luis Obispo, or LoSAN corridor, along with other state and local electeds and stakeholders. The delegation rode the coaster from Sorrento Valley to Solana Beach with the administrator and his staff and highlighted the importance of the LoSAN corridor to the state and the need for track relocation to move the tracks off the precarious Del Mar Bluffs. The administrator also mentioned the upcoming deadline to apply for funding through the Federal State Partnership for Intercity Passenger Rail Grant Program. SANDAG will be supporting NCTD's application for construction money for the SANDAG project to replace the 100-year-old San Dieguito River Bridge. In other news, the annual appropriations process kicked off in March. SANDAG worked with our congressional delegation to highlight our funding requests, including community project funding to our 5 House members and 2 senators. Members of Congress will be considering which funding priorities and projects they would like to elevate and submit to the Appropriations Committee. The path to receiving funding requires the Appropriations Committee to select our priorities and projects for inclusion in the draft bill. Should our priorities be included and pass out of committee, both houses of Congress would then have to pass a funding bill, which doesn't seem very likely at this point in time. Next week, SANDAG will be joining the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce's annual trip to Washington, D.C., where we will participate in the Chamber's events and update our delegation on our priority projects. We're looking forward to advocating for our region on this level with our board leadership. Now I'll turn it over to Jose Alvarez for an update on our state and border activities.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is Jose Alvarez and I support the State Government Affairs Program for the agency. I'm here to give you a brief update on our state legislative matters and more importantly, request the Executive Committee to take a support position on Assembly Bill 610 by Assemblymember Holden and Senate Bill 825 by Senator Limon. Assembly Bill 610, the Youth Transit Pass Pilot Program would create the Youth Transit Pass Pilot Program administered by Caltrans for purposes of awarding grants to transit agencies for the cost of creating and implementing free youth transit pass programs to people attending certain educational institutions and providing free transit services to holders of those passes. Additionally, and of great importance to SANDAG's Youth Opportunity Pass program is that this bill would authorize a transit agency with an existing free fare program that enables a person of 18 years of age or younger to use a transit agency's bus and rail services free of charge to submit an application for the program without an educational institutional partner and utilize these grant funds to subsidize or expand an existing fare-free program. It's important to note that AB 610 is consistent with SANDAG's legislative program goal number 7, which calls for support for public transit funding and continued support for intercity rail, including funding to promote zero fare public transit. It's important to note that last year, the legislature passed AB 1919 by Assemblymember Holden, which is a nearly identical bill to this piece of legislation. Ultimately, the governor vetoed the bill as the program was unfunded. The next bill I'm bringing forward to you is SB 825 by Senator Limon. It's a public broadband services bill. This bill would add a metropolitan planning organization and a regional transportation planning authority to the definition of a local agency for purposes of eligibility to CPUC's local agency technical assistance program. This program grants local agencies support for, it provides grants for local agencies to support their efforts to expand broadband service to underserved and unserved communities throughout the state. Right now, MPOs and regional transportation planning authorities do not qualify to receive funds from this program as they are not included in the local agency definition for the program. This bill would include MPOs and RTPAs to ensure that we can receive future funding. This piece of legislation is consistent with SANDAG's legislative program goal number 12, which calls for support of efforts to pursue funding and enact policies, programs, and legislation that advance equity and inclusion, including eliminating the digital divide. At this point, I wonder if there's any questions from the committee regarding those bills.
Thank you very much. I'm just making sure that the definition of local agency for MPOs is only applicable to issues of broadband. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm really looking forward to, thank you for the report, looking forward to going to DC. There's a lot of information. I'm going to touch upon this during our regular board meeting because I think it's important and I've heard it loud and clear with some of our board members. But this whole conversation around RENA 2.0 is, I think, something that we should be monitoring as well. I know that we've talked about it in our legislative committee. So just making sure that that's something that we're monitoring. I think that's important. And like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about it in our whole board meeting, because I think it's important for all board members. Using my other hat as the Vice Chair of Housing, Land and Transportation for the California State Association of Counties and some work that we're doing there. So I'll share that in a minute, but I want to make sure I brought that up. Then I'm also excited to see that Assemblymember Holden is reintroducing the Youth Transit Pass. And so I think that we should continue to advocate for that. So with that, do we have any public comment on this item?
We have 4 public commenters, Chairwoman. The first is in person, Dr. Tim Bailash.
Good morning, committee. Dr. Timothy Bailash, Central Coastal Del Mar, San Diego City. I just wanted to make a quick mention. I attended a town hall for one of the congressional people in New York City yesterday. And they happened to mention, I didn't fact check it, that Boston has free passes for their transportation system for some time. I was in St. Louis some months ago and talking to a friend, and he said, oh, we've had that here for years. Now, sometimes we think of ourselves as the shining light on the hill when we're actually behind the times. I support the youth pass.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Blair Beekman, who will be followed by Catherine Rhodes. Blair, please go ahead.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Interesting idea to give a certain amount of power to local regional transit agencies about the future of broadband issues. I can't stress enough the importance of in bridging the future of the digital divide. It's not just how much placement of new broadband you can place within local neighborhoods for better service. It's making sure that process of placement is an open, accountable process. And it's those good civil rights, civil protection ideals that invite the community to the process. That's an important component this time in our lives of really holistically building the future of bridging the digital divide. And it's those sort of issues that I think will be more convincing to people that this is a really important project. And we have to trust that we can work in those terms. So a real good luck in how to develop that kind of style of thinking for this sort of project when you're going to bring this sort of project to the transit agencies, regional agencies. With my remaining time, I wanted to, I guess, thank yourselves. It was nice to hear that federal agencies are still visiting Otay Mesa, and just proof that there's a real hopeful project going on. It's nice to hear that federal agencies are a part of that hope at this time, and a reminder to myself that I mentioned before about Biden's visit to San Diego, talking about the future of submarines in the Pacific and Southeast Asia. I'm totally against that plan, but at least I can see him doing that. But for him to then travel to Monterey Park to talk about gun limiting issues, that was not a very good planning of travel. I hope he can reconsider that.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Catherine Rhodes, who will be followed by our final commenter, Mike Bullitt. Catherine, please go ahead.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes. Please use the federal ARPA fundings that are in the county for the youth pass, but only if you stay in school. I think that would be great. If you go to school, you get a pass. If you don't get one. Please start monitoring Senate Bill 519 by State Senator President Tony Atkins, where she's trying to reform our San Diego Sheriff's Department. And, I'm sure all of you are aware that of the great investigative reporting in the San Diego Union Tribune by investigative reporters Jeff McDonald and Kelly Davis that have been working on this for years. They've uncovered a hell in our county where people are dying and there's drug use that is being smuggled in by the sheriff's department. And people are dying and the sheriff promised to do something about it and then she refused to. This will give counties local control, but it's not a mandate that they actually have to do. Like the county can just say, we're going to just do something like we're going to make sure that everybody gets drug tested. All the sheriff people that work in the jails get drug tested and they get screened for drugs when they go to work. So, all these deaths will stop. That's something you could do, but right now you can't. And so people are dying, and I forgot how many people died this year, but San Diego County is more deadly for a person than Rikers Island in New York. I think I'm not sure if that's the second deadliest, but we have surpassed that. So, all the law and orders you see, they go to Rikers Island and people die all the time. There's violence in there, and there's not that much screening for mental health. So you have crazy people in there that don't give anybody any peace. And it's just a horrible place. And please support this and track it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our final speaker will be Mike Bullock. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I was hoping that the speaker, Mr. Alvarez, would have mentioned the legislation which would change the 2030 climate mandate in the direction where it needs to go. It's 40% below 1990 levels, and the legislation would move it to 55% less. And that's extremely important. Of course, that would just make your job harder, wouldn't it? But on the other hand, we all want to survive, and we all know that human survival requires climate stabilization. And to do that, we need these reductions by 2030, and it needs to be a state law. Also, we need state laws to reflect what CARB is now admitting, and that is that we need to reduce driving from 2019 to 2030 by 25%. The reference that you are using now is 2005, and that happens to be a high watermark for per capita driving. Believe it or not, the per capita driving has gone down from 2005, so it's lower in 2019. So when they say 25% below 2019, that's a lot tougher than saying 19% from 2005. And of course, the horizon is 5 years sooner. Also, it's 2030. So CARB is admitting that we need to do much, much more And so you need to have legislation to tell CARB that they need to factor that in when they give well, we need to change SB 375. I mean, it should not be talking about 2035. That's the wrong thing. That's like our regional decarbonization framework, which lies to everybody and tells them.
Thank you that your time has expired and that concludes the public comments.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Hannah and Jose, for the presentation, and not just the presentation, but all the work that you're doing. I know this is the easy part. Thank you. I just very quickly wanted to express how glad I am to see that SANDAG can throw its weight behind AB 610. Assemblymember Holden has long been a partner in this effort to bring youth transportation passes to California's youth. I want to shout out Mid-City CAN for their statewide advocacy in support of AB 610. I certainly would be very, very happy to see us support this bill, and I'm happy to approve, make a motion to approve the staff recommendation here, Chair.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Oh.
Yes.
If we can point out there, it does say information, but in the text, it recognizes that it's asking for a support position, so it does require a motion.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion from my colleagues? Seeing none, please vote.
I have,
Yes, I'm sorry.
no, you can go ahead and vote on this. I know it's a separate comment I have.
Okay.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
All right. Before we discuss our next meeting, I just wanted to share, I forgot to mention this for both of you, and I said thank you. I was in a event yesterday with U.S. Senator Padilla and the Lieutenant Governor, and the Lieutenant Governor in front of everybody was advocating for East Otay Mesa and the Tijuana River Valley. So I was like, oh, this is great. So I wanted to share that with you because I know she'll be in DC with us as well. And so I think it's really important. I think that hopefully we're going to be able to get additional resources to be able to move this work forward. All right. Go ahead, sir.
I had a comment on an additional piece of legislation. First, I really thank Vice Chair Shania for pointing out all the work that our local community have been doing with regards to bus passes and of course supporting Member Holden's bill. I wanted to point attention to another piece of legislation. This is a follow-up on SB 1161 by Senator Min, and this year a follow-up that is SB 434. This is a string of legislation that deals with hate and hate harassment in our transit systems, the 10 largest transit systems in our state, and now just simply tracking it, and it requires funding. I brought this up last year at MTS, and I know MTS is now has that on their legislative agenda. I hope that we can at least track it and hopefully support it. It's not a high cost item, but it's real critical to reducing harassment for women, for people of color in our transit system. And I think it's also the right approach of using a public health approach. So I hope we can keep an eye on that and at some point support it in some way. Thank you.
Any other discussion from committee members? No? All right. With that, I want to thank everyone. This concludes our executive committee meeting. Our next executive committee meeting is on May 12th at 9 a.m. So just make sure you put it on your calendars. With that, the meeting is adjourned.